successful people think this way, and in the same way of thinking, unsuccessful people think that way. The most important, which I learned from Drucker and from many others, is long-term versus short-term thinking. Is really successful people think long-term. Unsuccessful people think short-term. In other words, they go for advantage, opportunity, making money. The short-term thinkers, whereas the very best people think long-term. They think, where do I want to be in 5 years or 10 years from now? What do I want people to say about me when I'm gone? And so long-term thinkers, surprisingly enough, when you think and act long-term, you accomplish vastly more than if you're a short-term thinker. I remember, as I said just offline, is that I was there at the beginning of the Genius Network. The very first day, day where we got together and swapped ideas at your apartment in Tempe, Arizona. And I still remember that. And I'm so happy with your success and what you've accomplished, and with so many other people. It's just wonderful. You know, we talked, I believe at that time, we talked about the mastermind concept. And that's why, and you said, well, why don't we get together and mastermind? And so I flew over to Phoenix and taxied out to your house for the first time. And that's something that's so important in the Genius Network is when Napoleon Hill did his work, he said that every single person, the Thomas Edison, Henry Ford, and so on, every one of them began to be successful when they began to mastermind with other intelligent people and just share ideas. And I've had the same experience, because one idea in combination with your other ideas can change your life forever. Yep. You know, I'm happy to say, some years ago, about a decade ago, a publisher said, have you got any books or anything that we could publish? And I said, well, I've got a book on time management. So I sent them a manuscript, and it was called Double Your Income, Double Your Time Off. And he said, great publisher, Barrett Kohler. And he said, well, it's kind of a boring title. He said, but the chapter 15, there's 21 great ways to stop procrastinating and get more things done faster. That's the title of the book. And he said, well, chapter 15 is entitled Eat That Frog. And this is a story from Mark Twain. And Mark Twain was the most successful speaker, writer, author in America for 3 or 4 decades. And he wrote this. He said, if the first thing you do in the morning is you eat a live frog, then you'll have the satisfaction of knowing that it's probably the worst thing that can happen to you all day long. And your live frog is your biggest, ugliest task. And so we should just get up in the morning and just get it done. He said, and if you have to eat 2 frogs, eat the ugliest one first. So if you have 2 big tasks to do, do the most important. And then the other corollary is that if you do have to eat a frog at all, it doesn't pay to sit and look at it for very long. In other words, get on with it. Well, so he said, let's make this the title, Eat That Frog, and 21 Great Ways to Stop Procrastinating, and then run the theme through setting the table, organizing the plates, and so on. And so I did. I sent it back to him, and they published it. And he just told me this week, Steve Persanti, my publisher, is that we just hit 2,500,000 sales in 50 languages.
Wow.
Makes me the best-selling time management author in history. And it has one basic concept for us with the Genius Network is pick your most important task each morning and start on that task and discipline yourself to work on that task nonstop until it's done, and don't do anything else. If you can do this, which takes tremendous character, takes tremendous discipline, takes tremendous mental strength. If you can do this, the first time you do this, it will be very hard. You will be so distracted and you want to check your emails and make a call and get some coffee and so on. And what you have to do is you have to discipline yourself to stay at that, wherever you are, and do that task until it's done. Then I say, give yourself a reward. The time management author, Julie Morgenstein, says, don't check your email in the morning. And I love that as a concept. So you get up in the morning, start on your most important task, and discipline yourself to stay at it till it's complete. Then your reward is to check your email. But unfortunately, what do most people do? Is they check their email in the morning and in the afternoon and in the evening. They get up at night. They're just always checking their email. And each time you check your email, they estimate it takes 17 minutes for you to get back to work. It takes 17 minutes for you to get settled down and back to work and so on. And then somebody sends you an email and it goes bing, ding, bing, bing, and you stop. You're doing, and you check your email again. And the email is one of the most wonderful communications devices in the world, but it'll kill you if you just keep checking it. So what you do is you turn it off. I always say, leave it off, leave it off. Start your task and discipline yourself, and your big reward when you finish your most important task is now you can check your email. And if you can do that, what happens is you start to become so productive. So many people have told me that they became millionaires with the eat that frog concept. Just start and complete your most important task. But if you can't do that, by the way, you'll always have to work for someone else who can discipline you to do it. Someone who will supervise you, someone who will check on you. What will happen is you'll always be in the bottom 80% and never be a big success. And remember this 80-20 rule, it bites you in the bum all the time. And 20% of people make all the money. The 80% of people, why do you think we're having riots today? Who do you think's rioting? Certainly not the top 20%. They're busy making money. It's the people in the bottom 80% who are frustrated and angry and upset and so on because they have too many bills, as they say, too much month at the end of the money. They don't know how to get out of it. The answer is make a list of what you have to do, pick the most important task, and work at it till it's done. Your whole life will change. Anyway, I just get on. People say, what's the key to success? You just had it. And there's no shortcuts, and it doesn't take any genius. Well, no offense. It just takes starting and completing your most important task. And if you'll just do that, get my book, Eat That Frog. It's and I'm not trying to sell books because you don't get very much with a book. But the thing is, the book is now 50 languages. Can you imagine that? 50 languages, 2.5 million copies. And by the way, it's probably closer to 10 million because there are several countries like Iran that don't pay royalties, and others have published the book without telling anybody. So it's published all over the world, but they cheat you on the royalties. So it's probably 10 million copies of it have been sold. And so that's my starting point. And everything else, here's another thing, by the way, and I love what the lady was saying about values. I had a good friend, maybe you know him, his name is Mark Walden. And Mark came to my office when we were doing our coaching program some years ago, and he just dropped in. He lives in Northern California, San Francisco. And I said, so what's happening in your life? Was it a break? He said, well, I've come up with a new question. And he said, I'm just walking around teaching everybody. And the question is, what is my most important value in life right now? What is my most important value in life right now? And I thought, geez, that's a great question, because all of us think about values and are impressed by values. So I asked everybody in the room, what is your most important value in life right now? And he said, you have to ask this question every day, all day long for a week. Every day, just keep asking the question. Your first answer will be, love and truth and God and things like that. Just keep asking the question and keep drilling down deeper. Keep drilling and drilling until you finally, the most important value pops out. And that can change your life. And so what I did is I did the same thing. I asked the question for a week. What is my most important value? And the way you can tell your values are because of your behaviors. What you do is you look at your behaviors, and especially your behaviors under stress. When your behaviors in difficulty, you'll always demonstrate who you really are inside by what you do on the outside when you have difficulties or challenges. So I finally concluded my most important value is what the lady said, is freedom. Freedom is my most important value. And you know something? America was established by people for whom freedom was their most important value, and it changed the entire world. There is still no country in the world for which freedom is the organizing principle. Freedom is, a concern for everybody, but Americans, more than any other nationality,
Thank you.
love freedom. And so therefore your job is to have freedom. How do you have freedom? Well, one of the things is you have to have enough money so that you can buy the things that you want, that you can take care of your family, that you can provide for your spouse and for your children. And when you achieve freedom, more freedom, you feel happier. You have more energy. You have higher self-esteem. You feel more in control. And everything that you do moves you toward having more or less freedom. So that was a turning point for me, is that freedom is the key. And then I look at my family. Everything I've ever done with my 4 children and my wife has been to increase their freedom, give them more freedom, open doors for them, open up opportunities for them. So freedom is mine. So what is yours? That's a great question. And the way you tell is you simply look at, what do you do under pressure? What do you care about more than anything else? What is really your value? And it's a great question, great organizing principle for your life.
Yeah, but Brian, let me and as you know, most Genius Network members are have teams. Many have running multi-million-dollar businesses. What is the dark side of success in the midst of building and growing? What have you noticed where things become out of control, out of hand, where people start losing it? Because as you know, a lot of entrepreneurs, because of the success they have, comes responsibility, obligations, messes, navigating things. And here we are in the middle of a pandemic. What have you found to be success traps that people have gotten themselves into that you would have any advice, suggestions, or insights on either how to avoid or how to navigate if you're in the middle of it?
Well, Joe, that's a really tough question, but you and I have talked about this subject, is that what is our ultimate goal in life? Remember the old thing is write your own obituary. Mm-hmm. You write your own obituary. What do you want people to say about you when you pass on? And I went for a long walk on a beach near Brisbane in Australia some years ago, and it was about an hour or 2 hours of walking. And I asked myself that question, and the answer that came up for me and never changed again is that after I pass on, I want, when my children meet someone who knew me, they say, "Oh yeah, I knew your father. He was a really good person." That to me was my ultimate goal in life. I knew your father. He was a good person. And I have never deviated from that. I never have done anything or said anything to anybody under any circumstances that would cause anybody to say other than he was a good person. And so you have to keep that in mind. See, this is the purpose in life. And one of the things that I learned is that success does not change you. It just makes you more of what you already are. It just makes you more of what you already are. If you're a good person, you become a better person. If you're a jerk, you become a worse jerk. If you're honest, you'll be more honest. If you're dishonest, you'll be more dishonest. So you always have to think in terms of long term. One of the things that I found, and I've written about it extensively, I wrote a book, by the way, a couple of years ago called Get Smart. And it has 10 ways of thinking that have been developed over the ages. And basically, it says that successful people think this way, and in the same way of thinking, unsuccessful people think that way. The most important, which I learned from Drucker and from many others, is long-term versus short-term thinking. Is really successful people think long-term. Unsuccessful people think short-term. In other words, they go for advantage, opportunity, making money. They're short-term thinkers, whereas the very best people think long-term. They think, where do I want to be in 5 years or 10 years from now? What do I want people to say about me when I'm gone? And so long-term thinkers, surprisingly enough, when you think and act long-term, you accomplish vastly more than if you're a short-term thinker.
Hey, I hope you're enjoying this video, and I want to let you know that I have a new book that's come out, and if you'd like to get it absolutely free, there's a link below in the description, or you can wait till the end of this video, or you can simply go to joesfreebook.com and you can get a copy there.
And and the book, Get Smart, has basically 10 different ways of thinking. One of them comes from Daniel Kahneman, who got a Nobel Prize for it. He's an economist and a philosopher, and it was, what is it? 2 ways of thinking.
Think fast, slow.
Yes, thinking fast and slow. And what he says is basically successful people think slowly about important things in their life. One of the things that Kahneman sort of touches on, but which I hammer, is the word consequences. And consequences says, you always ask, what are the likely consequences if I do or don't do this? And everything in life is consequences. And the true measure of how really smart you are is your ability to predict the consequences of doing something or not doing it. Milton Friedman said the Nobel Prize winning economist. He said the quality of your thinking can be measured by how accurately you predict what will happen as a result. One of the greatest thinkers of history, a man named Frederick Bastiat, said the same thing back 200 years ago. He said that the primary consequences of everything you do are good. You eat this, drink this, do this, because the primary consequences are good, or why would you do it at all? He said, but it's the secondary consequences that are more important than anything else. And your ability to accurately predict the secondary consequences of a behavior determines your whole life. And so, for example, the people who belong to the Genius Network, one of the reasons that they belong, one of the things that they get, is they get ideas that can affect their lives and work long term. So truly superior people are long-term thinkers. And they make the sacrifice, and they travel, and they invest the time and the money. And it's all aimed at long-term results, consequences, what happens as a result of what you do, and then what happens, and then what happens. And so that's what you and I learned right at the very beginning. Is we started exchanging ideas. We read Napoleon Hill's Think and Grow Rich, and how the mastermind was the starting point of success for so many people. And then we started doing it. And then it was sort of like a baton in a race. We handed off the baton, and you took it and ran with it. And here you are.
Yeah, which is awesome. And let me say this though, Brian. I'm looking at your Instagram right now. So you got 756,000 followers on Instagram. You got millions of people that watch you on YouTube. You've got all these books. You're the top selling audio author in the world. Every day, literally, your ideas reach millions of people every single day. And what advice would you give for the creation of the content? Because one of the things I've been thinking about a lot is people say content is king. Well, I think content is obviously valuable, but I think context is more important than content. And communication is one thing, but comprehension is another thing. Being able to put content out there, not having people comprehend it is a whole nother thing. And right. You have just put out so many people's lives have been impacted and changed by your ideas. And we have many people here that would love to multiply that and to share what their wisdom, their knowledge, and reach people not only for the selling and promotion of their products and services, their own companies, but literally just to impact people. So what advice would you give to be productive in that area? Because you're literally one of the most productive people on the planet in this particular area. So you obviously have a process and a system for writing books, for putting information out there. You've been doing it for many, many years. How do you do it? What have you learned that if you were to be able to download, here's how to write a book, here's how to put your ideas together, here's how to, because I don't know, out of all the books, have you written any books that you wish you would have not written, that you would have not put out there? Or are you pretty happy with everything?
Well, I'll tell you 2 funny things, but I want to start with the second thing. Is many years ago, I was writing books, and I'll tell you why in just a second. And my people in my coaching classes, people in my seminars would say, well, how do you write a book? And how do you write so many books? And how do you have so many books? And I say, well, you just do this and you just do that and so on. And finally I said, look, I'll write it down. I'll write down my book writing system. So I wrote down 20 steps to write a book and get published. And I put it on my website, briantracy.com. And I say, look, if you want to learn how to write a book, go and get those 20 steps. And then my partners, you know Eric Berman, don't you?
Oh, yeah, very well.
Eric has been my partner for 20 years. He said, Brian, we should create a really first-rate course on how to write a book and get published. Because 64% of adults dream of writing a book. They fantasize about writing a book. They plan to write a book, and less than 1% will ever do it. And then less than 1% of those will ever get published. Why? And they always say, the reason is because I don't know how. I just don't know the process. So anybody here who's watching, who wants to write a book, go to my website, and there's a download. It's called Brian's Formula on How to Write a Book, 20 Steps. And it's free. Just go and take it. And here's the steps. Step 1, step 2, step 3. What I call it is like a recipe. And again, it's one of the things that I've learned from you and from other people in the Genius Network is a recipe has a series of ingredients. And what you do is you combine the ingredients correctly. You don't cheap on this ingredient and ignore it or delete this ingredient. You follow the recipe and you get a good dish. And if you practice enough, eventually you'll be able to prepare a beautiful dish over and over again. And so, for example, when I was single, I found that I was going out to restaurants to have Caesar salad. And so I would meet a girl and I would invite her out for dinner and we would go to a restaurant where they served Caesar salad. And one day, and I still remember this, I noticed that the guy making the Caesar salad, and this is where they brought all the ingredients to the table and they mixed it all up in a bowl and they put it on your plate. And so he's mixing up the salad and it was a very good salad, a very good restaurant, good salad. And I said, how do you make this salad? He said, well, they give me a recipe and the ingredients in the kitchen and then they just have me do it. So I come to the table side and make it. Say, well, if this guy, who was not very smart, if this guy can make a delicious Caesar salad, so can I. So I decided I'm going to get a recipe and I'm going to make a Caesar salad. And I did, but what I did is I tried to cheat. Is instead of using fresh romaine lettuce, I used butter lettuce. And instead of using freshly squeezed lemon juice, I used lemon juice out of a bottle. Instead of using fresh garlic, I used minced garlic from a bottle. Instead of this, I did that. And the salad just tasted crummy. And so finally, I made this decision. I remember this because it affected everything else in my life. I made this decision. I'm going to stop screwing around. I'm going to follow a good recipe exactly, and then I'm going to work with that recipe. And I did. And now I have a recipe to make Caesar salad. I am probably, immodestly, probably the best Caesar salad maker in the world. Or very close. Everybody who has ever tasted my Caesar salad say it's the best Caesar salad they ever had in their life. And it has 14 parts, 14 steps, ingredients, the way that you mix them, and so on. And I have people who beg me, please make a salad. Come to my house at Christmas and make a salad. Can I come to your house? Because once they've had my salad, they'll never be satisfied. So people say, well, how do you make your Caesar salad? I say, well, you do this and you do that. And you put this and you put that and everything else. And I said, oh, what the heck? I'll just write it down. So I wrote it down because I have this passionate desire like you to help people. I just want to help people. I don't want to make money. If I make money, good. But mostly I want to make a difference in people's lives. So I said, okay, I'll just write it down. So I wrote it down and I put it on my website, briantracy.com. You go there, Brian's Caesar salad recipe, and you can download it. It's free. And everybody who's ever done that, they communicate with me and they say, I made that salad. I've never made a Caesar salad in my life. I followed the recipe, and everybody in my family said it was the best Caesar salad they ever had in their life. So therefore, if you like Caesar salad, go and download it. So I used to tell this story just the way I just told you. I used to tell this story in my big seminars, some of my Peter Lowe seminars with 10, 20,000 people. And I say, here's an example. And the example is that people don't follow the recipe for success. If you want to sell successfully, by the way, there's seven steps that I have discovered and developed, which I teach 1,000 different ways. I've taught more than 2 million salespeople my recipe for selling. And many of those people have become millionaires. Chip Wilson is also a friend of mine. And he told me, he booked me, he told me, he said he was working as a yoga instructor in a small yoga studio in Vancouver, in Kitsilano, which is a neighborhood. And somebody put him through my course. And I had the course on video with workbooks and everything else. And he said, he suddenly realized that there's no future being a yoga instructor. And so then he looked around, because we teach the superconscious mind in that course, Psychology of Achievement. He looked around and he said, the money is in yoga clothes. That's where the money is. And the quality of clothes being produced, generally speaking, was very poor. So he just came up with this idea of producing high quality yoga clothes made with high quality fabrics, well put together. And the rest is history. As you say, he's worth almost $5 billion today. He told me when he brought me up to speak, we spent 2 days together. He told me that basically these ideas made him rich. Very, very simple ideas. To set a goal, work on your most important goal, unlock your creativity, and so on. He's a super guy. He's one of those guys that deserves to be successful. You're happy for his success when you talk to him. So this is so the key is get the recipe. If you want to be excellent in sales, 20% of salespeople earn 80% of the money in sales. Why? It's because there's a recipe for selling. It has 7 parts, 7 ingredients. If you follow the 7 ingredients, what will happen is it'll come out at the other end, just sale after sale after sale. And if you don't, it won't. If you want to be successful in business, you have to have a marketing plan. As our friend Dan Kennedy says, is that whatever business you're in the marketing business. And your success or failure, your income, the size of the house you live in, car you drive, what happens to you in life is determined by how good you are at marketing your product. And marketing is attracting qualified people who can and will buy your product or service within a reasonable period of time. And what I just told you is the result of thousands of hours of research. Marketing means attracting people who can and will buy and pay for your product or service within a reasonable period of time. And so therefore, once you learn how to market, you can market any product if it is a sellable product. So people have to learn how to market. So in selling, by the way, and I'll just give you this quickly, because I produced, after Psychology of Achievement, I produced a program called Psychology of Selling. And Psychology of Selling, according to their research, has made more salespeople millionaires than any other single training influence in the world. Mm-hmm. Psychology of Selling. And how do you get Psychology of Selling? You go to Audible. You go to Audible, and there it is, and you download it. You download it on Audible and listen to it. There's nothing hard about that.
Well, let me do this. Don Cooper, go ahead and let me see if I can pin your video. If you can put that up on the screen again. He's got the, let me see if I can pin, well, I'm trying to, but.
Psychology of Selling. And by the way, it's in book form. And I decided, it was such a big program, I decided to divide it into 2 books. One is Psychology of Selling, the other is The Art of Closing the Sale. And countless people write to me and tell me, OMG, OMG, it made me rich. It made me rich. You changed my life. You made me rich. I hear that so many times. You changed my life. You made me rich. And it's not because I'm a genius. It's just I found the recipe and worked with the recipe.
Well, you know what, Brian, actually, all of this how to be successful stuff is really a setup. I would prefer if we just have everyone come over to your house and you personally prepare a Caesar salad for us, because that to me would be, I think like the cherry on top sort of thing. And by the way, as you're talking, Neil Moore, Dr. Hooley, they've put links to your how to write a book, the Caesar salad recipe. So all of those things are in the chat. And let me ask you something about speaking. Okay, so we've got your friend Joe Weldon on with us, who's one of the original founders of NSA, and you've spoken for NSA many times, and both of you guys have been speaking. And Joe Weldon, what do you think of Brian Tracy? I mean, you've been doing this. You guys have been in the speaking world for many, many years, and you introduced him when he was, at the last time he came out to NSA that I was at. So what are your thoughts here?
Well, hello, Brian, and thank you for sharing those
Hello, Joel.
ideas. Well, I realize after the 35 years or so that we have known each other, you have never made me a Caesar salad. So I feel like I have no connection to you at all.
Well, Joel,
Well, both of us go back to the days of Earl Nightingale. And of course, Joe Polish was a big Earl Nightingale fan. And Earl was called the Dean of Personal Development.
yes.
And Brian has taken over that mantle. He really took it over when he started making cassette programs for Nightingale back in the late 70s and early 80s. And there's nobody that has that kind of reputation today. He is really the king of the personal development business. And that story of everything that he's done based on the recipe. And that's what a system is. And Joe, that's what you've done with marketing. That's what Brian has done with everything he's accomplished. But when you and I talked in preparing for this meeting, you told me why you have written 86 books.
Yeah.
And since in Genius Network, we have many authors that have 1 or 2 books, I had never heard that explanation of why multiple books was so important. So maybe you could add that. But Joe, to answer your question, this is a living legend. And if everybody that I know that knows Brian, when you ask him about, oh, he's really a good person.
Yeah. Yeah. No,
And
I'll
you
tell you,
achieved that.
unlike so many of the people in the personal development industry that are filled with, look, narcissistic assholes, Brian is a genuinely nice person who really is caring and stuff. And so, I mean, you're absolutely right. And so, but I'd love to hear what you're saying about the books. Yeah. Why so many books? That's an interesting question.
First of all, when I saw Joel Weldon 5 years ago, when I came to speak for the Genius Network, I was just amazed because he is a legend in speaking.
Yeah.
Basically, everybody in speaking thinks of Joel Weldon as almost like a god because nobody prepares as well as he does. Nobody takes speaking as serious as he does. And to have Joel as my friend is one of the great honors of my life. And I thank you, Joel. And I remember after the Genius Network, we went out and we had lunch out on the balcony at the Arizona Biltmore. And he and I and my wife and his wife, we sat and we talked. It must have been 2 or 3 hours. And I'll never forget that for the rest of my life. And Joel, thank heavens, never forgot it either. It was just a great moment for us. So thank you, Joel. Such an honor just to be with you in the Genius Network. Okay, so let me tell you my little story because it is outrageous. The story is I wrote a book and I had problems with my publisher and problems with promotion. And finally, I found that if you're going to write a book, you need to invest about $100,000 to promote the book because the publishers will not help you. They will publish the book. They will get the book into the bookstores. They will make it available through the book distributors like Ingram's, but they won't help you. And I thought if I published the book, they would promote it. So the book came out and it sold 35,000 copies out the gate. And I said, well, geez, this is great. They said, well, I don't know, maybe we'll continue to produce it. Maybe we won't. And I said, well, what do you mean? I said, well, maybe we'll do a paperback for it. And anyways, they just let the book fall on the floor. And so I went out and I found an agent, a promoter, a publicist, and she agreed to promote the book for $10,000 a month. So I said, okay. So I gave her $10,000 a month, and she was a brilliant promoter. She got the book. She got me doing interviews. Interviews were the primary way, maybe still the primary way, to sell a book. And after about 3 months, and she got me more than 100 interviews, and the book sales went up. And then after 3 months, the book sales started to drop down, and the interviews dropped, and the interviews disappeared. And I said to her, I said, what's happening? They said, well, you've had your 3 months. I said, what do you mean? They said, well, the people that will interview you for radio, television, magazine, so on, will interview with you 3 months before the book is released and 3 months after it comes out. And then they go on to other books. There's 100,000 books a year that are published. And I said, well, how do I get them to publish? They said, you can't. You have to write another book. He said, write another book? Yeah, write another book, and then you get into the cycle again. And I said, okay, I'll write another book. And I made a decision at that time. I'm going to write one book every 3 months. And then there'll always be a book in the transit. There'll always be a book in the production line. And they would publish it. And so I did. I started writing a book every 3 months. I wrote a book every 3 months for 26 years. And some years I wrote 5 books and 6 books. And 1 year I wrote 7 books. And I just kept pumping them out because no one book is going to be successful, but one book will support another, which will help another, and so on. And the more you write, by the way, the better you get at it. And it's very important that people understand this. Is you don't. I spoke to a professor at the university, and he said, how do you write a book? He said, just write. He said, just write. That's how he teaches people at the university. Just write. Sit down and get on with it. I mean, there's no big complicated, just write. And he said this, and I never forgot this. He said, you can't get worse at it by doing it. You can't get worse at it by doing it. At Goethe, the Greek, the German philosopher said, everything is hard before it's easy. Writing your first book is really hard. Most people actually don't sell books until their 3rd or 4th, sometimes their 5th or 6th book. And if that book takes off, then all the others start to sell. And now there's a market for you. And so today I have 7 major publishers in the United States, English publishers. So if I decide to write a book, I think of a subject and I will call one of them or more than one. And I'll say, if I write a book on this subject, will you publish it? And somebody say, well, it fits into our schedule this year, or no. But I'll always find someone who will say yes, because when you write a book, people buy it. So I don't have any remainders. One of the things that publishers hate more than anything else is remainders, is that they publish the book and they end up with a warehouse full of books. And by the way, some of our best friends were sunk because they wrote the book and people didn't buy it. So I began to write a book, 4 books average every year for 26 years. So I've written 86 books, and I have 3 books behind me. You can see behind me, I've got 3 books sort of in the production line for later this year.
Okay, I hope you found that video awesome and useful. So if you want to get a free copy of my book, I want you to click here. And if you want to watch some more videos that'll be useful and awesome, click here. Go ahead. They're over here. Do it now. Come on. Thank you. Watch them.